It's time to put your health in your own hands. Get ready to learn from today's top health and wellness innovators and thought leaders on Optimal Health Radio. Now, here's your host.
Hello, this is Tammy Patzer, and I'm really excited to introduce today's guest, Elizabeth Patric. Elizabeth is the owner and founder of Spiritwater Gardens, LLC, where she co-creates with the help of non-physical nature beings of love and light frequencies, flower essence combinations that address our physical, mental, emotional, sexual, relationship, financial, and spiritual challenges for our healing and transformation. She grew up in the very heart of the Adirondack wilderness of upstate New York, and she is a flower essence therapist, energy healer, author, and tantric yoga and meditation teacher with more than 35 years of practice. She is a certified and registered yoga teacher, and she has the highest credentials. She's also certified several yoga instructors at her Northwoods Yoga School, which she founded. She is the author of Flower Speak, The Flower Whisperer's Guide to Health, Happiness, and Awakening. And she is also passionate about astrobiology, and she's writing her third book, tentatively titled The Metaphysical Naturalist, Reconnecting with Nature for Healing and Expansion of Consciousness. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you for having me, Tamara. I'm so excited to be here.
This is a really exciting interview for me because it's about a topic that I really am interested in, but I know absolutely nothing about. So tell me more about flower essences.
Okay, Tammy. Well, flower essences are imprinted in a vehicle, typically water. And so when you make a flower essence, you only need a few flowers, unlike if you made an essential oil where you would need acres and acres of flowers. When you make a flower essence, you just need a few flowers that you place in water and put out into the sun. And within a few hours, the imprint or information or blueprint of the flower has been taken or imprinted by the water. You may have heard of Dr. Masaru Emoto, and he tells us that water changes its quality according to the information it takes in. And in this case, when a flower is put in water, the information in the water changes. And then this flower essence vehicle, water, is then preserved and charged, and then can be utilized for your healing and transformation.
Yes, I have heard of Dr. Emoto. He's the person who's famous for showing, for example, that words, even written on paper, can change the crystallization of water when it's frozen. And then he did a lot with music, for example, playing hard, heavy metal music versus, let's say, Beethoven, and how it changed the molecules of the water. So what you're saying is that just with a few flowers, the flower's essence transfers into the water and changes it so that you can use it for health and healing and transformation. So I guess I have two questions. How did you get started in making the flower essences? And then, of course, how can other people make them? Is it difficult?
No, it's not difficult at all, Tammy. The way that I started, I had a degree in plant ecology, and actually, maybe I should go further back than that. I grew up in the Adirondacks of upstate New York, as you mentioned, and that is a 3.2 million acre area that is all devoted to wilderness. And the place that I grew up was right in the heart of that wilderness, and 15,000 acres of private land that was devoted to creating habitat for wildlife. And as a small child, I was aware of nature spirits, and I used to make them lunch. And I used to, it was part of my awareness until I was about 12. And then I sort of woke up again when I was 23, when I was working for the Shakers in Canterbury Village, and which is in New Hampshire. One of the Shakers knew of my abilities and woke me up to them. So from that point on, although I was getting degrees and involved in other projects, I was aware of the nature spirits. And it was after I had started teaching yoga and become somewhat discouraged with the results I was getting for my students for yoga, that I decided that I would try flower essences. And I initially bought some flower essences, but they were made in alcohol, and I didn't like the idea of giving my students alcohol, so I decided there must be another way and started to make my own flower essences. And it kind of made sense because I had a plant ecology degree, and also I had been aware that there are non-physical aspects to nature that we need to pay more attention to.
That's really interesting, because most people are so disconnected from nature, or because of the culture or the society we grow up in, when we do have this deeper connection to nature or to other things that other people might consider odd or non-existent, we tamp it down, so that, like you said, you had had these experiences up until you were about 12, and then obviously you were reawakened to it in your 20s. So yet your path was always to learn more about nature, because you actually did that in an educational way, according to the norms of society, I guess would be a good way to put it, because you studied it in that college environment. So what are some of the uses for flower essences?
Well, the uses for flower essences are literally endless. We think immediately about the physical. So, of course, on any level on the physical, we have flower essences. We have flower essences for the heart, for the lungs, for the skin, for the brain. But we also have essences on the emotional level. So we have essences that are for mastery of emotion. We have essences for releasing old emotional debris from the energetic totality. We have essences that are good for eliminating this overly nostalgic or sentimental kinds of sort of emotional beingness that we know is no longer serving us. There are essences for our memory, for our mind, for concentration, for focus. There are essences for relationships and enhancing relationships. There are essences for everything related to a broken heart, to mastering the relationship with ourselves, with the divine, with our sacred other partner. We have essences that help us with abundance. They work at a very subtle level, so we might think of them as being more subtle in that they're working on the energetic level of our totality, perhaps more than on the physical. And I do readings for my clients, so I'm able to see the energetic totality of my clients and can see where there are imbalances in the energy, and then how to address them with flower essences. And so if my client is showing a typical, let's say the client is showing lack of self-esteem or lack of self-worth, then there are essences that can assist that client in overcoming or transcending those situations, because those situations come up in the energy field. And it can be really interesting. Sometimes there'll be a client that will come to me with let's say a back problem, but then when we do the reading on that client, it turns out that that client is really off track with their soul destiny path. And when they take the essence and slowly get back onto their soul destiny path track, their back problem disappears. It just dissolves. So I've been doing this for about 18 to 20 years approximately, and I still find it endlessly fascinating, Tammy.
It is fascinating. So when you were talking about different essences for the gamut. It ranged from everything from, I guess, self-esteem to abundance. So for example, in nature, let's say abundance, what would the flower essence be for abundance? Is it a combination? Is it a specific flower?
Yes.
What is it?
That's a good question. So there are specific flowers for the abundance, but my higher guidance has always had me make combinations of essences. So typically in the industry, you see that most companies sell individual flower essences, but from day one, my higher guidance has had me making combinations of essences. And if you could just take a moment to imagine a dark room and then imagine one light in the room. That's the analogy for your energetic totality receiving one flower essence. Now, if you receive, let's say, a dozen to maybe 20 flower essences in a combination, the analogy for that is that the room all of a sudden has between 12 and 20 lights in it, and they are, you can see on the etheric level that they are forming into sacred geometric structures which have more structure. And when there's more structure of light introduced into our energetic field, there is a greater permanence to whatever can be affected in the energetic field through that combination that's in sacred geometric structure that is introduced into our field. So the essence that I have for, I have several essences actually for abundance and prosperity, and the one that's coming to mind is called Bountiful Embrace. And offhand, I think there are about 20 different flowers that are combined in that formula to create this ability to transcend some of the kinds of things that we need to overcome. We've been so deeply conditioned. Abundance manifestation is one of the most difficult, I think, of issues to clear from the totality. We have been conditioned and deeply embedded with information that we've gleaned as in lifetime after lifetime about that money is bad, or financial wealth is evil, or that we're not worthy of financial wealth. It can go on. And the more that I examine this, the more I see how deeply embedded and conditioned we are to not be in abundance. So that's a good example in terms of understanding that it can be very tricky to clear that. And flower essences are so good in offering the assistance to help us the way the flower essence kind of works is that you take it, and it doesn't necessarily happen overnight, but over time you get these insights, you get these revelations. Wow, why was I thinking that way about abundance? Or why was I thinking so negatively about financial flow? So anyway, yeah, there are so many areas. I can't even begin to, in this short time, talk about all of the different kinds of issues and old conditioning and ego kinds of things, and things our parents told us, and things the media told us that we need to overcome in order to be that most enlightened version of ourselves that we possibly can be.
So when you were talking about that there are actually, like, in this one essence, more than 20 different flowers are, I guess, blended together to create this. When you create these flower essences, where do you get your flowers? You live in Wisconsin now. Do you grow them? Do you travel the world? Where do these flowers that you create the essences from come from?
Right. It's a great question. So all of the flowers that I have gathered over the years are from organic sources. I would say maybe 1% of them might be questionable, but overall, they're all from organic sources. And also, you have to be divinely guided to gather them. So I may be walking about one day and I see a flower, but if I'm not guided to get that flower, I don't get it. I don't gather it until a time when I'm told to gather it. And a lot of times that means that the flower has some kind of compromise. Maybe it's growing along the road and there's been salt put on the road, or maybe pesticides or herbicides put on the road. So I have to find the flowers in a pristine condition. And of course, they have to be in a perfect bloom stage. Just having bloomed is the time that you collect a flower essence, or flower, to make it into an essence. So I've collected from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, the North Woods here in Wisconsin. I've collected from Canada, the Olympic Peninsula. Of course, I've been back to the Adirondacks. I've collected from the prairie of Kansas. I've collected from the Florida Keys. I spend quite a bit of time in Kauai collecting flower essences. So yes, I've been all over. I'm guided to go on pilgrimages to certain areas to collect flower essences.
Wow, what a wonderful way to travel, because you get to travel to all of these beautiful areas of the world. And then, of course, you have a purpose and a mission in that. So that's really kind of a cool way to travel around the world. So can you tell me a little bit more? Once you collect these, it sounds like obviously it's just not like, oh, let's go pick flowers. So how do you preserve these flowers?
Yeah. Well, I also forgot to mention that I also have about a half acre and grow flowers in my garden. Each year I grow different flowers in my garden. And then I have 5 acres across the street from me that I have planted a lot of wildflowers in, with the hopes that they will take. So when I go to make a flower essence, I'm able to, if there's a whole group of flowers, say, you have to pick the right flower. So you're actually guided as to which flowers to take. And then you can't touch the flowers when you can't just go pick the flower. You actually can't touch the flower, because the energy field in your hand can then affect the energy field of the flower. So I have these beautiful tongs that I pick the flowers with, and then typically I'll have a crystal bowl with me, and I'll place the flowers in the crystal bowl and place it in the sun. And then I'll sit with it as it's imprinting, or I'll wander around the woods, or sometimes eagles come and perch right over the essence as it's imprinting into the water. It's always fascinating the way nature supports this process. Does that answer the question?
Well, yeah, it's very interesting because, like you said, it isn't like you're just going out to pick flowers, and then you've talked about the nature spirits, and also I think you earlier mentioned about the co-creation of this, and that it's not just you out there, with this idea that, oh, I've got this degree, and so I'm going to go pick flowers and make flower essences out of them.
Not at all. Yeah, not at all.
About the co-creation process?
Yeah. So if you can visualize a deva of a flower as sort of a permanent firework or a spark that holds the wattage of the flower essence. So nothing physical is actually transferred to the water, but a potential of light information, or what I call deva energy, is vibrant and alive in a co-created flower essence. So when we talk about this idea of co-creation, we're talking about this idea that we're honoring nature beings that are on the non-physical realm that most of us spend our whole life not even being aware of, that are assisting us with this process. And an essential oil will not hold a deva presence, but a consciously made flower essence will hold this deva presence, and that deva will stay with that flower essence for its whole flower essence life. If you were to take a Kirlian photograph during this process, you would see that a mist-like imprint with small trailings moves into the water. And then at Spiritwater Gardens, we actually use rose water to preserve the essence, and then we charge it with what's called a geocrystal. That is sort of the process in a nutshell. But if you go to my book, Flowers Speak, which is available at Amazon, you can find out how to make flower essences in a step-by-step process. And you can understand more about co-creating with the different hierarchies of nature spirits, because there are different forms of nature spirits all that work with us. Just as if I was giving you a Reiki session, we can also know that there are certain nature spirits that are giving the devas a Reiki session. They're managing the energy on that level of nature. And the devas are made up of elemental energies that are being managed by the deva. So there's this exquisite multi-level matrix that we completely ignore in this culture. Places like Ireland are a little bit more aware of this, and more people are becoming aware. And one of the things that I have on my website, one of the projects on my website, is that I encourage people to maintain a 12-foot diameter area on their property where they guarantee that they will never cut down any trees or do anything to really challenge the nature spirits, so that the nature spirits can anchor, much like a spider anchors a web. The nature spirits can anchor their matrix or their web. And if we did this all over the world, and I have many people holding these pieces of land all over the world, if we're able to do that, then the nature spirits can do their work. But in most areas, the whole nature spirit matrix is collapsed. I hope that's not too confusing. Hard to explain.
Well, when you talk about the nature spirit, there's a lot of people who may or may not understand what that is. You actually, I was looking at your website, and you actually have quite a bit of information about the nature spirits. Can you talk a little bit more about the nature spirits and what they are, and maybe how to recognize them, even if you're not 100% aware?
Yeah, that's a tough one because everybody has a different way of being aware of the nature spirits. I was able to see them as a young child and was awakened by that Canterbury Shaker in Shaker Village in New Hampshire. I was awakened by her so that I suddenly started seeing them again. I don't quite know how she did that. There are shamans that can help you begin to see them. There's a flower essence called Pink Lady Slipper that is a very good essence to take if you're wanting to be able to see more on the level of nature. I have an essence combination called Fairy Connection that helps my clients to see and to feel. One of the things that I think my clients often make a mistake with when they're attempting to see the nature spirits is they're attempting to see them in a way that they think they're going to see them. And yet the divine or nature realms may have a little bit different way that they're going to tell you about them. For example, maybe you think you're going to see them, but maybe you'll hear them, or maybe it'll just be that the hair on your skin stands a little straighter as you're in the presence of a nature spirit. The nature spirits can be cultivated also by just bringing in like fairy furniture, or having a lot of people build flower fairy houses that are filled with flowers. Just bringing flowers into your space and surroundings helps to bring in those deva and nature energies. It's also about reaching out to those energies, because if you don't reach out to them, you have to interface somehow. You've got to have a place of interface. So you communicate with them, you talk to them. I have a kind of laid back attitude about my deva and nature spirits. I don't do any rituals or dogma or celebrations really. They put up with me because I just know they're there, and I celebrate that they're there because I have all these beautiful flowers there, and I often can see them, but I can't say that I always can see them either. I think that we could get to a point where we could see them very easily, but then we might not really be part of our world. And I know that my divine guidance wants me to help other people. And so I sort of have to walk in between those two worlds, being aware of the flower essences and the flower devas and nature spirits, but at the same time being highly aware of the day-to-day issues that my clients have and needing to talk to them about those, which is an entirely different vibration, and kind of trying to be a bridge between those two so that we can represent the deva nature spirits and all of their wonderful healing abilities, but at the same time help clients to move in the direction of interfacing more with those nature spirits, and also just helping clients heal. The deva nature spirit energies are just wonderfully exquisite for healing. If you can imagine just delightful beings dancing around and just completely happy, I'm kind of like that myself, then you'll understand that you really want these beings around because they just keep you in this very ecstatic, blissful, peaceful place.
I think the peacefulness is key in anything that we do. And I think you're right, when you can feel that nature energy. For example, recently my son and I planted some roses and then some natural Florida flowers, and people kept telling me that roses would not grow where I live, and all my roses are flourishing. So
wonderful. Yes. Yeah, that's wonderful. The deva nature spirits are supporting them. Yes, it's wonderful. Yeah, I think it's such an important thing to reach out to the deva nature spirits because they are a whole level of care in your garden that makes your garden so harmonious. And so it's like having angelic chimes in the garden. There's just this sense of harmony. I know in my own gardens, I hardly have any insects. I suddenly realized one year that I hadn't used I had an organic spray that I used for bugs, and I realized suddenly I hadn't used it in like 2 or 3 years. Because when your gardens are in a harmonious place, there might be a few insects, but they don't take over. There's a balance there, and you find that mostly you have all of these wonderful insects that are helping out with all of the processes of the plant cycle. And also it's the soil continues to improve because they're actually devas of the soil. And we can, my neighbors are amazed because I will not have a frost in my garden. They'll all have everything dead in their gardens, and my plants are still fine. That doesn't go on all winter, of course, but it seems that I get about a month extra in terms of being frost-free. And I notice also, because I call in the devas of all of my, the atmosphere, the winds, the storms, I call in all of them. And it seems that if we have a small tornado go through or very high winds, then I'll maybe have a few small branches on my yard, but there'll be other neighbors that will have trees that have fallen down. It really makes a difference. I know a farmer that started doing an invocation for the nature spirits, and he was able to see that he would have rain that would just be on his field. The other areas would not have it, but he on his 400 acres would have rain. I think it's a huge piece that's missing from our whole culture, that we could help the weather considerably by being more aware of these other levels of nature that everyone ignores.
That is really just phenomenal just to think about. And there's so much of our world that many of us are not aware of. And it sounds like you're somebody who could actually help people get more connected to nature. If somebody wants to reach out to you and find out more, what's the best way to do that?
So my website is spiritwatergardens.com, SPIRIT, water, gardens, and gardens is plural.com. And I do free readings. So I have over 195 different flower essence combinations. And when someone comes to my website, they can be really overwhelmed because there's so many flower essences. But the divine has always had in place this idea that I will do free readings for all of my clients and help them narrow down to a few essences, what would be most auspicious for them for their greatest healing and transformation. They can also email me through the website and get a invocation to start calling in the nature spirits. And they can sign up to have a space that they hold for the nature spirits. And you can see on my website all of the people all over the world holding space for the nature spirits, so that eventually the nature spirits will have all these anchors so that they can be their matrix is collapsed at the moment, but it can be rebuilt and give them structure and within which to do their service for humanity and for the earth.
Wow. Well, I'm definitely going to go do that and sign up and become part of that. So I obviously have a connection to nature. I live in Florida, and I do definitely appreciate nature and everything. And when you were talking about the eagles that come and watch over, it's funny because when I go outside, I have a pair of ospreys that live on my property, and they will follow me around, like follow me wherever I go on
I love it.
take a walk. And it is very interesting because, you'll be standing there and you'll go, gee, it feels like somebody's watching me. I'll look up and sure enough, the osprey will be right there looking down at me, and then I'll move and then they just move to another tree to, I think they're just making sure that I'm, not doing anything I'm not supposed to be doing on their land.
That's great, Tammy. I love it. We have the highest concentration of bald eagles right here in this county in all of the United States, except for Alaska.
Wow.
So I find that the eagles seem to oversee all of what I'm doing, and I really think they know all about everything that I do. I honestly do. And the very first time I made a flower essence, I went down to my pier after I'd done it, and it was August, and there was a pair of loons that came and did a mating dance within just about 15 feet of me, like they were celebrating, because they don't do mating dances in August, they do them in May. And so it was just this wonderful confirmations that we get from nature about the work that we're doing. The whole nature realm celebrates when we begin to work in this way.
Well, that is just phenomenal, and what a beautiful way to end our conversation. And Elizabeth, I'll invite you back again because obviously we barely touched on anything related to flower essences today. But thank you for such a good overview and opening my eyes to the nature spirits, because that's something, like I said, I really didn't know anything about. So today's conversation has been really great, and I learned a lot. So I really appreciate that.
Thanks so much, Tammy. It's great to be a representative for the Deva and nature spirits. That's part of my soul destiny path, and I love doing it.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. This is Tammy Patzer. Go make it a beautiful day.
You've been listening to today's top health and wellness innovators and thought leaders on Optimal Health Radio. To get more solid health and wellness information, visit optimalhealthradio.com.